Hey guys, it's M. Usually I do a whole preamble, but I love this game so much it's going to be hard to do that. Outlast Trials is an action horror game made by Red Barrel Studios, where you are some random pulled off the streets after signing a shady deal, then you're forced into horrific situations to do tasks for the company that kidnapped you. This premise sounds pretty simple, but the story and this game itself get so much deeper than that.
Proper probe is an input and an output device both.
The first hours of Outlast Trials are probably some of the most important out of any game I've played. You have a small tutorial to teach you the basics, but after that, you're pretty much on your own. They drop you cold turkey into these confusing and awful situations and tell you to perform. Your task usually consists of moving items to certain locations, decoding things, and other stuff that the player might be a bit confused on when they start. The game will give you visual hints on what to do, but even the most observant will probably get confused in some kind of way. This is just something you have to pick up on fast and be okay with if you want to keep going. On your first runs of missions, you will most likely be completely lost on what you're doing. I wouldn't be surprised if it took you an hour or so to get one level done on your first attempts, as you're scrambling trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. This will scare off a lot of people. It's probably the least beginner-friendly pick-up-and-play kind of game I own. It's extremely hard to recommend this game to people I know because of that exact fact. But if you can't accept that, you're in for one of the best horror/action games I've ever played for multiple reasons. This game has a lot of simple to understand small mechanics in its missions. Big enemies hit hard but are slow, doors with light somewhere on their frame are trapped, it's harder to be seen in darker areas than it is in the light, stuff like that. We'd be here all day if I got into every single mechanic, but what I'm saying is, there's a good bit going on here. Horror games can fall apart trying to do too much, or just make things extremely overwhelming. Something like the backroom survival immediately comes to mind. But every single mechanic here plays so well into itself, especially recently, that I can't think of any complaints as of late. To put you in a hypothetical, let's say you're an intermediate player. You understand how the traps work and how to escape most killers, but while you're doing your mission, you get chased away. The killer's right behind you and you see a door. In your panic, you go through the door, but you don't notice the trap. Now you're being punished for not paying attention and letting your emotions get to you. These are things you will grow to fundamentally understand, as again, these mechanics are simple to grasp, but the game will try to push you into a losing scenario or try to get you into a place where you panic and make you make a dumb choice. But since everything here plays so well together, when you become more experienced at this game, this goes from a kind of situation you think is completely unfair and stupid to something you could quite easily play around. Instead of our hypothetical intermediate player running and bashing the door open, a more experienced player would probably do something like listen to how close the killer is, crouch while opening the door to avoid the trap, and then they'd continue running. Or maybe they'd quickly scan the room and see what else they could play around, like the darkness or simply looping around the chaser. This game really rewards you for learning its systems with letting you do plays like this. You go from feeling naked and afraid to this badass that can escape any sort of scenario. Other than that, I really want to praise some of the more unique mechanics of this game. The darkness/night vision mechanic is a super interesting thing. Running away from chasers into pitch black rooms adds a lot of spice. Some of the dark rooms you could run into have practically no hiding spots, meaning you have to sit in the dark and carefully maneuver in a way where you don't accidentally bump into or alert the person who followed you in. Glass. Anybody who's played this game will tell you shattered glass is one of the most noticeable parts of the game. You'll be trying to crouch or sneak around and then you'll hear a cartoonishly loud crunch and look down to see you've stepped on some. This will alert any nearby threats that you're around and prompt them to investigate the area. Given you were crouching to attempt to hide from them in the first place, you often have to play it super cool to avoid getting seen or just sprint away as it's exposed your cover. As someone who is not max level and has who knows how many hours in the game at this point, this is often the one thing I overlook and it leads to so many tense situations. They're easily avoidable if you're paying attention to your surroundings, but if not, or you're just simply thinking about other things, you'll be hearing that crunch often. Some may say it's an annoying feature, but without it, you'd be able to easily crouch around everywhere with little to no danger to yourself. Psychosis. Psychosis was a broken mechanic for a long time. In short, if you end up getting hit by anything that did gas damage, your sanity would go down. This would distort the screen and mess with your hearing in random intervals. Upon losing your sanity completely, your screen would stay distorted and you would have to outlast see what I did there? The Skinner Man, a threat that only appeared when your sanity was fully drained. The issue before is that when you were insane, no one else would hurt you. This meant unless you ram into traps while running away from him, you'd be pretty much safe as long as the Skinner Man didn't touch you. And even then, the Skinner Man himself didn't do that much damage. So oftentimes, high-level players, me included, would just ram into anything that did gas damage, then brute force tasks, as it was a lot easier to be in Psychosis than to normally play the game. But then it changed, and it became the most intimidating situation to be in. Like before, you still lose your sanity from gas-related traps or enemies, but instead of just visual and sound distortions, which were already a problem, tentacles will now come out of the ground, smacking you if you touch them and making certain situations 10 times more difficult. It sounds like a small change, but it makes for a world of difference. Upon full sanity loss like before, you have to run from the Skinner Man, but the tentacles become more frequent, and the enemies won't actively sprint after you like they normally would, but they will investigate the commotion of you running, and unlike before, they will still hit you. This made Psychosis go from the thing top players did to escape consequences to by far the scariest scenario to be in and one of the easiest ones to die from. It's an awesome mechanic that really made you fear and respect it. I can't think of anything like it in any other horror games that I've played. It's really interesting in co-op because while you're blocked by tentacles or running from the Skinner Man, people who took no sanity damage will see you just as if you lost your mind. But that's enough about the simple small mechanics. Let's get on to some of the bigger ones.
Are you trying to make me jealous, dear?
It doesn't seem like the kind of game that would have this, but Trials does have builds and they'll play a big part in how you play the game. You get to select from 3 perks, or amps as the game calls them. They seem like they would be some small little tweaks, but they make a world of difference depending on your playstyle. They'll let you get away with things you normally wouldn't be able to do, like step on glass, open trap doors, or escape any grab the enemies can do to you, with a cooldown of course. While there are some meta picks as some situations are more common than others, or higher level players know how to avoid certain things better, I could see someone running pretty much any of these and I'd understand. I personally still run Slippers, which helps you avoid glass sounds, and it saves my ass all the time. But on to the next thing, rigs are a lot more defining. These are like a special ability that works on a cooldown, that will let you do plays you couldn't otherwise. Each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses, making them all viable options. Barricade, for instance, lets you, well, barricade a door, making killers take a while longer to get past them. Then you have Blind, which puts down a blinding smoke screen wherever you want that can stun chasers for a while, and if you're active in the mist afterwards, they can't see you. One sounds way better than the other, but the cooldowns are balanced around that. So while Barricade may sound significantly weaker, you can use it way more often, making it so in certain scenarios, it's better to have this one to help hold off the attackers and to have something that you can more frequently use. Some even require you to get really creative with their uses, which again the game will reward you for. X-Ray and Jammer come to mind immediately. X-Ray is self-explanatory, as it lets you see through walls and will highlight anything of note that you're looking at, for the duration that it's up. This is cool, but it doesn't have the direct ability to stop killers. Barricade can hold them off, and the Blinding Mind can pretty much disable them for a period, so why would you bring this? With X-Ray, since you can see the killers through walls and things, you can use it to carefully avoid the scenario where you would make contact with the killer in the first place. You can even use it while you're in a hiding spot, if you don't trust your ears, to directly see where the enemies are and know when it's safe to leave. Jammer does have a stunning ability on enemies, which is cool, but it has more practical use on anything else. In its description, it says it works on electrical objects, but doesn't exactly break down bit by bit what each electrical object is. It does a ton of stuff like opening padlocks, disabling cameras, can open mechanical doors. This is without a doubt one of the coolest and most multi-use abilities in the game, but like the others, it's balanced by the fact that it would never have the straight stopping power of something like Blind, and will mean you have to rely on your own raw skills to handle certain scenarios.
So long as he's killing commies, I may look the other way.
The enemies here are pretty unique for a horror game. I feel in most cases nowadays, you're running from some sort of entity or creature that you couldn't imagine defeating. But here you're running from deranged psychopaths from multiple walks of life. At first I imagined this would have really made this game a scare cakewalk for me. I've played Darkwood and Monstrum. What are some creepy people gonna do to throw me off? But the thing is, this game makes sure you respect and fear these guys. Your character can momentarily stun them, but they pose a massive threat to you with how much damage they can deal, or whatever other effect they can put on you once they hit you. Once you understand that, when you hear them rambling to themselves, even once you understand the game well and can avoid them, it'll still trigger some sort of reaction out of most people. Not much comes close to being chased and hearing the person behind you snarling through their teeth or screaming at you the entire time while you're trying to get away. It feels like it activates a primal reaction to escape. And again, since they aren't monsters, it gives a more realistic feel to it. Off of that, these guys are pretty memorable and I dare say likable despite how awful they are, which is definitely an impressive thing to pull off. The main enemies here in Gooseberry, Bombino, and Coil ooze personality, but even the side enemies have some charm to them. The Pusher and Goggles immediately come to mind. They're crazy without a doubt, and they're people you wouldn't want to be anywhere near in real life, but you'll get used to seeing their faces. The Pitcher is probably one of the coolest additions they got as of late. He shows up screaming and snarling through his mask. Despite the fact I don't think he's the biggest threat in the game, he always manages to make me feel uncomfortable when he arrives. To keep going about them, this isn't a game where you're being pursued by one singular entity. Multiple guys will be wandering around the maps you go to, and they will make it difficult for you to complete your tasks. You're going to have to learn all their strengths and weaknesses in order to compete with them, and all of those strengths and weaknesses are very unique, which with a roster this big is pretty impressive to pull off. Gooseberry, for instance, is one of the most damaging main assets in the game. She could damn near one-shot you on higher difficulties. However, she's not physically very strong. If you lock a door or barricade it, it takes her a bit longer than most to get it open. The tall enemies are strong and can burst down doors pretty fast, but they themselves aren't that speedy when it comes to moving or swinging, so unless you're forced into close quarters with them, it's pretty easy to just run away from them. Goggles is the only enemy character with night vision, so he can flat out see you where no one else can. This makes him a big threat because he might see you and cause you to run, alerting the others who can't see that just happen to be around. However, he's not the strongest or the fastest, so barricading or simply getting out of his range works quite well. Also, since the goggles are grafted onto his face, it seems, he can't remove them, so stepping into any light blinds him and heavily slows him down to the point he can't really catch you. Every single goon has things like this that makes it so even if you're getting chased by 2 or 3 of them, if you understand them fundamentally, you always have an option to escape them.
Grubby little pigs rooting around for whatever garbage they can get.
This game has an amazing soundscape. Every single thing you see makes the sound you expect it to. The enemies breathe loud or mutter to themselves, so you never really get blindsided and will have a general idea of where they are. And overall, this is one of the most important attributes to get right in a game of this genre, and they knocked it out the park. In those quiet moments where you can hear the electrical hum throughout the building, or the general footsteps of enemies far away, it makes you really feel immersed in the situation in a way I haven't felt in a long time. I don't even have much else to say about it. It's pretty much perfection.
He's going to ruin the game.
I made a point like this in my Dark Souls reviews, but your character here feels amazing. My problem with most horror games is the character you tend to play as often feels pathetically weak, or they're moving like they're in a dream, running slow, getting stopped by locked doors, etc. It does not feel like that here. Here it feels like you're playing a person who really wants to survive these scenarios. If you come across a locked door, you don't just try the handle and call it quits. Your character will full on smash their body into the door to open it. If they need to go under a tight space, they can slide under it. If they need to reach a space a bit high up, they take a bit more time to get fully on top of it. You don't feel like some insane badass they dragged in from the street or anything, but you don't feel completely inept either. If you're playing with your friends and you do the co-op options like hopping over a jump you can't make normally, or them helping you break down a double door, you feel a sense of camaraderie in these animations, that you both want to get out of here. You feel like the average everyday person in this game, and that's a feeling I haven't felt in a horror game in a while. Other than that, your character will react to a lot of scenarios and has a shitload of lines. From calling out enemies, objectives, saying they need help, to just the grunts and groans they make trying to escape these freaks, it further helps push you into accepting that you're a person inside of this world. Nothing quite puts you in the shoes of your character, like desperately trying to escape a killer and hearing them start to pant as they get tired. It really makes you feel the weight of these situations. I know I roughly touched on the trials themselves at the start, but we gotta dive into them in their own section, as they have some really awesome set pieces that I feel like I've never really seen executed this well before. They put you into these urban run-down locations where it feels like you've just been dropped out into the world, but sometimes you can see security or scientists peeking in on you from observing rooms. It kind of adds this feeling of hopelessness to it. You're not going to beat this trial you're in and flat out escape. You're a lab rat that's going to finish this and then get sent back to do it again later. Disregarding that, graphically this game's amazing, and the multiple locales they have you go through feel highly detailed in even the little aspects, adding to that immersive feeling yet again. But as for what they have you do, it's a variety of things like I said earlier, from dumping acid on evidence to executing rogue regens. It's a real fucked up and raw mess, to be honest, but no two missions are the same. It's clear they wanted every single level to feel like its own experience, and I think they succeeded. They each have their own hazards and quirks to get accustomed to, and it's awesome. Off of that, we then have the motto modifiers, which are probably my favorite part of the game. At the start of missions, you'll see these little emblems. These indicate what you can expect before you go into the levels. And the main trials are Genesis. It's always simple things like more damage or more enemies, which will change up the gameplay feel a bit on its own, but once you start to do the weeklies or escalation, you'll get to see how many variables can come into play. It's a fun way to add spice to a formula people think they understand. It's this kind of stuff that adds a lot of replay or simple play value to this game. You might think you can knock out Kill the Snitch quite easily, but what about with enraged enemies in Countdown? Grind the bad apples is pretty easy until you have limited intel or deadly prime assets. It's always fun to challenge yourself to beat these things with these small twists that make it go from an easy little thing since you have it memorized to an actual nightmare. The narrative, I'd say, is one of the strongest parts of the game. Similar to something like Dark Souls, it's not exactly showy and in your face most of the time. So if you don't want to care about it, you don't really need to. But unlike Dark Souls, if you search, there's a pretty complete and straightforward narrative going on here. As someone who hasn't played Outlast 1 or 2, it was pretty easy for me to grasp what was going on and grow attached to it. I like it a lot, and it works as a standalone story quite well. Learning about who the prime assets were before the trials, or learning what kind of man Easterman really is super interesting. But the other thing I like is one of the main narrative points is dragging people off the street and getting them used to these awful scenarios, making them capable of doing and accepting these awful things normal people couldn't. This pretty much works, and it even affects you, the player, without realizing it. When you first start this game, it's a confusing nightmare with visuals that'll make you flinch or at least feel some kind of way. But the further you go on, you go from simply trying to beat these levels and survive what's being thrown at you to trying to beat your high score or perform better than you did last time. You get desensitized from these horrible things, and it becomes more of an action game as you try to knock out as many of these things as possible. Murkoff's plan of making you this sleeper agent capable of doing and accepting anything is actively working on your character and you, the player. It's an awesome small detail you won't really pick up on unless you stop and think. To move on to the name events, I love how they push the narrative. This Amelia plotline that's going on, as a person who escaped through the cracks and trying to help you, is awesome and probably my favorite part of the story. Giving us objectives to complete for her and her communicating with us within the missions themselves feels great. It gives us, the players, hope that one day, one of the characters we play as will really fully escape this hell or purgatory. I love her and pretty much everything related to her. Also, the events last quite a while. Sure, you have to be on to play them, but they're all free and they last at minimum a week. Some even last a month. So I feel that anyone who cares can get on most of these events. Last thing on this point, I promise, initially you may think it's the entire corporation that's against you, but it becomes more and more clear the further you talk to them, everyone's messed up in their own way. Also, giving these little interactions to the characters you need to talk to for upgrades was pretty genius, all things considered. It makes it so you're far more likely to at least casually listen to what's going on while getting something, leading to you getting a bit more and more invested in the story without even noticing it.
Benign pharmacologicals!
I haven't brought it up much, but this game does have co-op. The trials scale for the amount of players you have, so it never feels overwhelming or that you need 4 players to beat this game with, but it does feel great for you and some buddies to knock out these tasks. Maybe you hit a button and another needs to be pressed in a separate location, so you make your friend wait there. Or you learn a code for a door your friend is standing at. This game definitely pushes teamwork above all else if you're in a group, and it's really nice to see a game where there's no incentive for running out like a madman and scoring everything by yourself. You'll often live or die depending on your teammates, which is most of the time an amazing thing. What I'm about to say goes for many hard to get into games, but since this is my first, I have to bring it up. Due to the difficulty of this game, a lot of people who aren't into it or its premise will immediately drop it. This means whenever you do co-op with higher level people, they tend to be pretty reliable and quickly understand what they have to do. When I was playing Escalation, which is the endless mode with random modifiers, I ended up matching up with 2 people I had never met in my life. I assumed our synergy would be off gameplay wise, but we'd get kind of far. I highly underestimated how locked in players of this game tend to be if they want to make it anywhere. We were making callouts, positioning carefully, and overall worked amazingly despite the fact we had never played together before. That was how I got my 10 rounds done of Escalation, for those of you who play the game and understand how hard that is to do. And every single high level player I've played with is kinda like that. Goofy, but understands what you need to do and how to work well with others. By scaring off the more casual audience with a more difficult gameplay loop, you end up with these people that have a deep understanding of the game and who tend to cooperate really well because the game pushes you to do so. It's, as I've said multiple times in this video, a feeling I haven't really felt with any other games, and it's awesome, for lack of better words. I've never felt more connected to a community without fully diving into looking for a Discord or a Reddit or whatever, but just simply by playing the game. There's There's so many little funny moments I can think of that just happened because I locked eyes with someone at the hub or just accepted a random invite. It really helps that this game is cross-platform and has working cross-platform chat. It's one of the key details that I think really pushes the sense of togetherness that this game has. Speaking of togetherness, and as something to wrap up this section, but not big enough to have its own, is the mini games we have here. They're fun little distractions you and some randoms can play. None of them are super deep to the point where you'd get frustrated and walk off hating the person, but as has happened for me a few times, I've played with people in the mini games and it pushed us into playing together. Even in these smaller things, the game wants you to cooperate. The Outlast Trials is one of my favorite games in recent memories. It's such a unique experience I've never had with any other game. It's not afraid of dropping you in the deep end, but it's also not afraid of rewarding you greatly when you begin to understand how it works. It's definitely not a game for everyone, as you have to be the kind of person who's really ready to sit down and learn a game, but when everything clicks, it's such a fun game I couldn't recommend enough if you're into that kind of thing. The devs are always working on improving this game and adding content for free, so you'll always have something to look forward to when you come back, and overall you can feel the love that comes out of development. Anyways, I've been blabbing long enough. What do you guys think? As always, as long as you're respectful, I'm glad to discuss with you in the comments, and I've been M, and I am out.